In the stillness of the northern woods, where the air is crisp and the trees whisper ancient secrets, a shadow moves with quiet power, silent, yet commanding. The ground trembles ever so slightly as the great bear steps through the underbrush, its massive paws brushing against the earth like an echo of something much older than the world around it. The air thickens with a palpable sense of reverence, and those who are fortunate enough to witness this creature cannot help but feel the weight of its presence. It is not just an animal, it is something more. It is Karu. For the people who lived in the wilds of Finland, the bear was more than a creature of the forest. It was a living force, a symbol of strength, wisdom, and deep spiritual connection. To the ancient Finns, Karu was a being that existed at the intersection of the physical and spiritual worlds, both protector and teacher, both fearsome and revered. The relationship between the Finnish people and the bear was born from a deep understanding of nature's power and mystery. It was a bond that went beyond the simple hunt, one woven into the fabric of their very lives. In the world of myth and legend, the bear was often seen as the king of the forest, a ruler whose strength could bend trees and whose roar could shake the very heavens. But to kill such a creature was no simple feat. It was not just the bear's size or strength that commanded respect, it was its spirit. To the Finns, the bear was sacred. Its presence in the forest meant something deeper, a reminder of the delicate balance between man and nature, between life and death. The old stories tell of how the bear's soul was believed to dwell not just in the body of the animal but in the very land itself. Some said that the bear was a relative, a distant ancestor whose spirit had chosen to take the form of a mighty beast. In this way, it was said that the bear was connected to every living thing in the forest. Its death could not be taken lightly. It was not a simple hunt for food, but a sacred act that required respect and reverence. When a bear was hunted, it was not just the end of a life, it was a powerful moment of transition. The people believed that the spirit of the bear, upon its death, would ascend to the heavens, where it would join its ancestors. In exchange for the sacrifice, the bear would send its blessings to the hunter and his community. This was a deeply spiritual exchange, one that required preparation, ritual, and respect. To kill the bear without honoring its spirit would bring misfortune, even curse the hunter and his family for generations. The concept of Karu was not just the bear as a creature, but as a force of nature. It symbolized something greater, something beyond the individual. It represented a connection to the earth, to the ancient gods, and to the eternal cycle of life and death. The Finnish people did not hunt the bear out of greed or pride. They hunted it because they understood that their survival was tied to the very forces that controlled the land, the seasons, and the spirits. For the hunters, the preparation was not simply physical. It was spiritual, as much a mental and emotional ritual as it was a physical one. The night before the hunt, the elders would gather the young men and speak in hushed tones of the bear's power and wisdom. They would tell stories of how the bear was once a great ancestor who had been sent to the forest by the gods to protect the people. The hunters were reminded that they were not simply taking the life of an animal but engaging in a sacred act, a meeting of the physical and spiritual realms. The bear itself was seen as an embodiment of the wild and untamable forces of the universe. It was both terrifying and awe-inspiring, capable of surviving alone in the deep, unforgiving forests, yet still capable of forming connections with humans. To the Finns, the bear was a bridge between worlds, a reminder of how fragile life could be and how every being, no matter how powerful, had a place in the great, ever-turning wheel of life. Even in death, the bear held power. When the bear was killed, the rituals surrounding its body were just as important as the hunt itself. The bear's body was treated with the utmost respect, its spirit honored in the ways that had been passed down through generations. It was not just a kill, it was an offering, a way to ensure that the bear's spirit would not seek revenge or harm the hunter. The bear was never to be hunted recklessly, and the community would gather to perform rituals that honored the creature's soul. In the stories told around campfires, the bear was often the protagonist. It was said that the bear could speak to the hunter, that it could offer wisdom in the form of dreams and visions. Some believe that if a hunter was lucky enough to encounter a bear in the forest and look into its eyes, he would be granted knowledge from the spirit world, a gift of insight that would help him in times of need. The power of the bear was not just in its physical form but in the wisdom it carried from the ancients. But this wisdom came at a cost. The bear, despite its majesty and power, was not invincible. It could be killed, and when it was, it marked a profound turning point for the hunter and his people. The death of the bear was both a blessing and a burden. To take its life was to assume a responsibility, not just to the land, but to the generations that had come before and those that would come after. The bear was not just part of the hunt, it was part of the very soul of Finland itself. Karu was not merely an animal. It was the embodiment of the wild spirit that runs through the veins of the earth, the pulse of the forest that has been felt by every soul who has walked in its shadow. Its presence was an echo of an ancient world, one where humans and nature were bound by a sacred, unspoken bond, one that transcended time and place. And in the heart of the Finnish wilderness, where the trees whisper secrets and the stars flicker like the eyes of ancestors, the bear's spirit still lingers. There was a time when the air itself seemed to hum with mystery, thick with the weight of stories carried on the wind through the darkened trees. In the heart of the Finnish forests, where the towering pines bent toward the sky like ancient sentinels, the people gathered in hushed reverence. They didn't speak much of it, but the bear was always there. It lingered in the shadows, in the rustling of the leaves, in the rustle of the earth beneath their feet. To the ancient Finns, the bear was not simply an animal. It was a living myth, a spirit whose presence was felt with every breath of the forest. From the very beginning, the bear's role was clear. It was not just part of the wilderness, it was the wilderness itself. For thousands of years, the bear was a creature whose essence was woven into the heart of Finnish culture. The Old Ones spoke of the bear as a sacred being, one whose power and spirit could never be captured by mere words. Its fur was like the moonlight that glinted through the trees, its eyes like dark pools reflecting the stars. It wasn't just the strength of the bear that made it sacred. It was its spirit, its presence in the world of gods and men. The ancient Finns saw the bear as a creature with a soul, a being that could walk between the realms of the living and the dead. They believed the bear was a messenger, a link to the divine. The rituals surrounding its hunt were not born out of necessity alone, they were born from the knowledge that to kill a bear was to do something far greater than simply take a life, it was to take part in a cycle that connected them to the ancestors, to the earth, to the gods themselves. The origins of the bear ceremony lay not in the hunt, but in the reverence with which the people approached the animal. It was sacred from the moment it was born, its first steps in the forest a blessing. The old stories spoke of the bear as a child of the sky, sent to the earth by the gods to serve as both protector and teacher. To kill the bear was not simply an act of survival. It was a ritual, a communication with the forces beyond the earth. When the bear fell, it was not a victory over the wild, it was a sacred exchange, a conversation with the spirit of the creature, a promise to honor its life. Ancient Finns believed that the bear's soul was a powerful one. It was said that the bear was connected to the world of the dead, that its journey into the forest was a walk through the veil between life and afterlife. The act of hunting the bear, therefore, was no small thing, it was an offering. The hunter wasn't just taking the bear's body, he was accepting a great responsibility. To kill the bear was to invite its spirit into your life, to ask for blessings, for protection, for wisdom. But this blessing came with a heavy price. The spirit of the bear had to be treated with the utmost respect. To harm the bear without due reverence would bring misfortune. The ancient Finnish hunters knew the rituals well. The moment a bear was seen, the hunt would not begin immediately. The hunters would stop, breathe deeply, and offer silent prayers. They believed that if they didn't show the proper respect, the bear's spirit would be angered. The ceremony began even before the bear was slain. It was a process that connected the hunters to the land, to the gods, and to the sacred cycles of the earth. Each step, each gesture, was imbued with meaning. As the hunter drew closer, the air thickened with anticipation. The bear, mighty and ancient, was not to be approached lightly. Some said the bear could sense the intentions of the hunter, that it knew when it was to be killed. Others believed that the bear's spirit would only allow its death if the hunter was worthy. The hunter's heart had to be pure, his intentions unclouded. It wasn't just skill with a weapon that mattered, it was the purity of the soul. The bear could see through the eyes of the hunter into the very core of his being. Only if the hunter was true to himself and the gods would the bear allow its life to be taken. When the moment came, the battle between hunter and bear was not one of simple survival, it was a clash of spirits. The hunter knew that the bear's soul would never truly die. Even after the bear's body was taken, its spirit would live on, watching over the land, guiding the people. The great beast was never truly gone, it merely passed into the next world, where it would continue to serve as protector and guide. The mythological roots of the bear ceremony ran deep. Stories were passed down through generations of how the bear had once walked among the people, teaching them the ways of the forest. Some said that the first bear was born from the sky, a gift from the gods to the people of the earth. Others spoke of the bear as a great warrior, a protector of the forest and the animals within it. And there were those who believed the bear was an ancestor, its spirit intertwined with the very bloodlines of the people. To hunt the bear was to honor that ancestor, to reconnect with the divine. These stories were not mere legends to the ancient Finns, they were truths, woven into the fabric of their lives. The bear was sacred because it was part of their story, part of their very essence. It was a reminder of the old ways, the ways that connected them to the earth, to their ancestors, and to the gods. The bear hunt was more than a ceremony, it was a rebirth, a reminder of the eternal cycles of life and death, of the bond between man and nature, between the living and the dead. In the cold, quiet nights of the forest, when the stars gleamed like diamonds overhead, the people could still feel the presence of the bear. They could hear its growl in the wind, see its shadow moving through the trees. And they would remember, the bear was never far away. It was with them always. The ancient ritual had begun long ago, and it would continue forever, passed from generation to generation. It was a part of their blood, their spirit, their very soul. And it would never fade away. When the sun dipped low over the Finnish forest, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into eternity, the bear's presence felt more than physical. It was as if the forest itself exhaled, a deep, resonant breath that spoke of ancient power. The rustle of leaves in the wind carried whispers, and in those whispers, the people heard the call of something greater. The bear was not just a creature of the wild, it was a divine being, a messenger between the heavens and the earth. To the ancient Finns, the bear was not simply a majestic animal, it was a god incarnate. The stories told of how the bear descended from the skies, sent by the gods to walk among men. It was a spirit of the forest, a living embodiment of the raw power of nature. It was sacred, not just for its physical might, but because it carried within it the divine spark, a piece of the gods themselves. The people saw in the bear the wild heart of the universe, its untamed strength reflecting the forces that moved the stars and shaped the earth. The transformation of the bear into a mythical figure began with its power to shape the world around it. It was said that the bear could move between the physical world and the realm of the spirits, traveling effortlessly between life and death, between the living and the gods. In Finnish belief, the line between the physical and the spiritual was thin, and the bear walked with one paw in each world. Its role was to serve as a guide, a protector, and a teacher, leading the people not just through the forests but through the mysteries of life itself. In every story, the bear was more than an animal. It was a figure of awe, a creature capable of incredible acts of wisdom and strength, but also capable of tenderness and care. The people believed that the bear could hear the thoughts of humans, that it understood their joys and sorrows, their struggles and victories. Some believed that when a hunter encountered a bear, the spirit of the animal would speak to him, offering guidance, warning, or blessing. The connection was deeper than a simple encounter, it was a spiritual exchange between man and animal, between mortal and divine. The myths surrounding the bear painted it as a protector of the people, as a being who could drive away evil spirits and bring good fortune. The bear was not just feared, it was revered. Its spirit was called upon in times of need, when the harvest was poor, when sickness threatened, or when the hunter's luck had run dry. In moments of darkness, the bear's strength was thought to carry the power to heal, to protect, and to guide. It was a creature of great mystery, whose presence in the forest brought with it a promise of something sacred. The spirituality of the bear was woven deeply into the fabric of Finnish shamanistic beliefs. Shamans, those revered spiritual leaders, saw the bear as a bridge between the earthly and spiritual realms. They believed that the bear's spirit held the power to communicate with the gods. When a shaman went into a trance, they often called upon the bear's spirit for protection or to gain knowledge from the other world. The bear was a guide on this journey, its wisdom far greater than any human could comprehend. In the quiet of the forest, the shaman would prepare for their journey, drawing strength from the presence of the bear. They would wear the skin of the bear as part of their ritual, believing that by doing so, they could channel the bear's spirit and power. The shaman's connection to the bear was not one of domination, but one of respect. It was a sacred partnership, one that required balance and understanding. The bear was the guardian of the soul, the one who could help the shaman navigate the realms of the unseen, of spirits and gods. The rituals of the shaman were complex, layered with meaning. They did not simply ask for the bear's guidance, they entered into a sacred space where they and the bear became one. The sound of the shaman's drum echoed through the forest, its rhythmic pulse mimicking the heartbeat of the bear itself. The shaman's chants were not just words, they were prayers, whispers to the spirits of the forest, to the bear's soul. In these moments, the shaman was not merely a human, they were a part of something greater, a channel through which the divine could speak. The Finnish belief in the bear's power was not restricted to the shaman's rituals. It was a force that permeated the very way the people interacted with the world around them. To kill a bear was to invite its spirit into your life, but also to take on the responsibility of ensuring that its legacy was honored. The bear was never simply a hunter's prize, it was a being whose spirit must be acknowledged and respected, or else there would be consequences. Missteps in the ritual could anger the bear's spirit, bringing illness, misfortune, or even death to the hunter and his family. The people knew that the bear was not an ordinary animal. It was a being of immense spiritual power, a divine force sent to remind them of their place in the world. It was a creature that existed outside the confines of normal time, a being that existed in the space between the living and the dead, between man and God. The bear was a reflection of the wildness of nature, a reminder that not everything could be tamed, and that some forces were beyond human control. The connection between the bear and the people was one of mutual respect, born of a deep understanding of each other's place in the world. The bear was both a teacher and a protector. It taught the people how to live in harmony with the earth, how to survive by respecting the land and its creatures. It protected them from the dark spirits that roamed the forest, and it guided them through the cycles of life and death. It was a divine companion, a creature whose presence was felt not just in the forest, but in the hearts and minds of the people. And so, the spirit of the bear lived on, not just in the trees and the winds, but in the souls of the people who knew its power. It was not merely an animal, but a god, a spirit, a force of nature that shaped the world and its people. Even today, the echo of the bear's presence can be felt in the forests of Finland, where the old ways are still remembered, and the spirit of the bear still watches over the land. When the full moon rises above the pine forests of Finland, the shadows shift, and an unspoken tension fills the air. The forest breathes, and in its depths, there lies an ancient power, one that is more than just a memory, more than folklore. The bear, revered and feared, emerges from the deep corners of the mind. It is not merely an animal, it is a divine force, a spirit that walks between worlds. The people know this. They know the bear is more than flesh and bone. They feel it in their bones, too. In the old days, the bear was not just another creature that roamed the forests. It was the forest itself, a living, breathing manifestation of the earth's primal strength. To the ancient Finns, the bear was not only sacred, it was a god. It was believed to be a child of the sky, a messenger sent by the gods to walk among mortals. Some said it carried the souls of the ancestors in its veins. Others believed that its spirit was eternal, weaving itself into the very fabric of life and death. Its presence was an unspoken covenant with nature, a reminder that everything in this world, every tree, every creature, every breath, was connected. The transformation of the bear into a mythical figure was born from this divine link. The bear was not simply a symbol of strength or survival, it became a symbol of something much greater, a link between the living and the spiritual realms. Its massive form, the deep pools of its eyes, and the silent power of its movements became representations of the gods themselves. In the stories passed down through generations, the bear was always something more, always something that reached beyond the simple act of living. It was a creature that existed in both the world of the living and the realm of spirits. To encounter a bear was to feel the weight of eternity pressing upon you, to be in the presence of something sacred, something eternal. The ancient people of Finland didn't just hunt the bear. They entered into a sacred dialogue with it. It was as if the bear knew them and they knew the bear. The spirit of the bear was believed to be a guide, not just for survival, but for spiritual awakening. When a bear was hunted, it was not just the physical body that was revered, it was the spirit, too. Hunters would offer prayers to the bear's spirit before the kill, ensuring that the transition between worlds was honored. It was believed that if the spirit of the bear was not respected, it could bring misfortune, illness, or even death. The bear's soul, they understood, was powerful and could not be taken lightly. This belief was not just about hunting or rituals, it was tied to a deeper connection, a spiritual bond between humans and the natural world. It was in these moments that the bear's divine nature was most apparent. The bear was not just a creature of flesh, it was a living embodiment of the forces of nature itself. The ancient Finnish shamans believed that the bear carried the wisdom of the earth and the heavens. They saw the bear not just as a hunter of prey, but as a spirit capable of moving between worlds, a being that could carry messages from the gods. Shamans, revered for their ability to communicate with the spiritual realm, often called upon the bear's spirit. In rituals and trance states, the bear was seen as a guide, a protector of the soul who could lead the shaman into the realm of the spirits. It was believed that the bear's power could heal the sick, protect the community, and bring blessings to the people. In the rhythmic beat of the shaman's drum, the presence of the bear would fill the air, drawing the shaman closer to the spirit world, closer to the divine. The bear's role in these practices was not just symbolic. It was central to the spiritual work the shamans carried out. In some rituals, the shaman would wear the skin of the bear, believing that by doing so, they could embody its power. This wasn't just a costume, it was a transformation. The shaman would become the bear, allowing its spirit to enter them, guiding them into a trance where they could communicate with the gods, heal the sick, or bring knowledge from the other side. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, an elevation of the shaman to a higher realm, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead, between humans and gods, no longer existed. The idea of the bear as a spiritual guide, as a divine being, extended beyond the shaman's rituals. The people knew that the bear was a force that could not be controlled or tamed. It was a reflection of nature's wild, untamable power. And yet, it was a force they could call upon in their greatest moments of need. The bear's spirit, like the spirit of the forest, was present in every part of their lives. It was the protector of the community, the bringer of good fortune, the one who could connect them to the divine. The connection with the bear was one of deep mutual respect. The bear offered wisdom, protection, and guidance, but it also demanded respect. To understand the bear's power was to understand the forces of nature itself, the forces of life and death, light and darkness, creation and destruction. The bear was not a simple being. It was a divine spirit that shaped the very essence of the world around them. In the dark, quiet depths of the forest, the presence of the bear still lingers. The people feel it when they walk under the canopy of trees, when they breathe in the cool, crisp air. The ancient connection between the people and the bear, the link between humanity and the divine, still exists. The spirit of the bear is not just a story passed down through generations, it is a living, breathing force that continues to shape the land, the people, and the very essence of life. It is a reminder of the sacredness of the world, the divine in every living thing, and the wisdom that can be found in the wildness of nature. For the ancient Finns, the bear was never just an animal. It was the very spirit of the earth itself, carrying within it the power of the gods and the strength of the wild. It was a reminder that the divine is always present, always watching, and always waiting, just beyond the edge of the forest. And in that waiting, in the silence of the woods, the bear's spirit continues to guide, protect, and remind the people of the sacredness of the world. The fire crackled in the still night, its warmth casting long shadows on the walls of the humble hut. Outside, the moon hung heavy in the sky, casting its pale light over the land as a gentle breeze stirred the trees. Inside, the shaman stood alone, preparing for what was to come. His breath was steady, his hands sure as they gripped the sacred drum, the skin of the bear stretched tightly across its frame. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the ancient responsibility pressing upon him. Tonight, the spirits would call, and it was his duty to answer. In Finland, the shaman was not merely a healer or a wise elder, they were the bridge between two worlds. The living and the dead, the human and the divine, these were not separate realms but parts of a greater whole, and the shaman was the one who could walk freely between them. It was in these sacred moments, in the quiet and the chaos, that the shaman's true power manifested. Through rituals, songs, and dances, they could call upon the forces of nature and the spirits of the ancestors. The shaman was not just a guide, they were a servant of the spirit world, entrusted with the sacred task of maintaining balance. When the bear ceremony was held, it was not only the hunters who participated, it was the shaman who played the central role in connecting the community to the divine. The bear, as the most sacred of animals, needed to be honored properly before the hunt. The shaman, dressed in ritualistic attire, would lead the people in preparing for the ceremony. The bear was not simply killed, it was invited into the world of humans with respect and reverence. The spirit of the animal would be honored, and its soul would be treated with the utmost care. Through the shaman's guidance, the people believed they could establish a sacred bond with the bear, ensuring that the hunt would be successful and that the spirit of the bear would be at peace. As the ceremony began, the shaman would take his place at the center of the gathering, the drum steady in his hands. With each beat, the pulse of the earth seemed to reverberate through the air, and the people fell silent, their hearts attuned to the rhythm. The drum was more than just a sound, it was the heartbeat of the universe, a signal to the spirits that the ritual was beginning. The shaman's chants rose and fell, his voice carrying a power that seemed to echo from the ancient past. His words were not his own, they were words of the spirits, words that called upon the power of the bear and the gods. The chants were not simple prayers, they were songs of life and death, songs that carried the weight of the community's history, its hopes and its fears. As the shaman sang, his voice was not just heard, it was felt, deep in the chest, as though it came from the very soul of the earth. Each word, each syllable, was an offering to the bear's spirit, an invitation for the animal to join the people in their world. The song would rise and fall, slow and then quick, mirroring the rhythms of the forest, the movement of the wind through the trees. And then, the dance would begin. The shaman, with eyes closed, would sway and spin, his body moving in time with the drumbeat. The movements were not just those of a man, they were the movements of the bear itself, the great spirit of the forest manifesting through the shaman. His arms lifted, his legs shifted, and the people watched, mesmerized, as he transformed before their eyes. The shaman's dance was a mimicry of the bear's, a sacred imitation of the animal's power. In the swirling motion of his body, he became both human and divine, both mortal and spirit. The people could see the bear in him, and they knew that through the shaman, they too were connected to the animal's power. The shaman's role went beyond simply conducting rituals. He was the community's protector, its spiritual guardian. Through the ceremony, the shaman not only ensured the bear's spirit was honored, but he also guided the souls of the people, offering them the strength and wisdom they would need to survive. The connection between the shaman and the bear was not merely symbolic, it was real, a living bond that connected them to the land, to the spirits, and to each other. The bear was a divine being, and the shaman was its earthly representative, the one who could speak the language of the gods and ensure that the balance between the worlds was maintained. At the peak of the ceremony, when the fire flickered low and the air was thick with smoke and song, the shaman would call upon the bear's spirit directly. He would offer his final prayers, calling for protection and for blessing. The energy in the room would shift, it was as though the very earth beneath them trembled, a sign that the spirits had heard. The bear's presence could be felt, its soul weaving through the crowd, and the people, caught in the magic of the moment, would feel the ancient power of the forest alive around them. The bear was not just an animal, it was a god, a protector, and the shaman, through his rituals, had invited it into the sacred space they shared. Through these ceremonies, the shaman was not simply a figure of the past, he was a bridge to the divine, a reminder that the world was more than what it seemed. The rhythms of the drum, the chants, the dance, they were all threads in a greater tapestry, binding the people to the spirits, to the gods, and to the land itself. The bear ceremony, led by the shaman, was not just a ritual, it was a way of life. It was an acknowledgement of the sacredness of nature, a deep understanding that every moment of life was intertwined with the divine. When the ceremony ended, and the people slowly returned to their everyday lives, the shaman's work was far from done. The bear's spirit had been honored, but the bonds forged between the people, the shaman, and the divine would continue to live on. In the stillness of the night, the spirits were never far away, and the shaman, with his sacred knowledge, would continue to stand as the intermediary between the human and the divine. The fire may have dimmed, but the magic, the connection to the earth and its creatures, burned forever in the hearts of those who had witnessed the ceremony. The village lay quiet in the early morning, the stillness of the air thick with anticipation. The sky above was dark, but a soft glow lingered at the horizon, signaling the approach of dawn. It was the time of year when the bear hunt would begin, the sacred event that had been passed down through generations. The men gathered in silence, their faces somber and focused. This was not just a hunt, it was a calling, a rite that required the whole of their being. They were not merely hunters, they were participants in an ancient dance with the forest, and today, they would ask for the strength of the bear to guide them. Before the hunt could begin, a series of rituals unfolded, each one deliberate and filled with meaning. There was no rushing through these preparations. Every action, every prayer, every gesture held weight. The night before the hunt, the village was alive with a quiet energy. The air seemed charged, as though the very earth was holding its breath. The shaman moved among the people, his voice a low murmur, offering blessings and prayers. The hunters gathered their tools, but before they could be used, each item was cleansed, purified, and made sacred. The knives that would cut, the ropes that would bind, the spears that would strike, all were washed with water from the sacred stream. This water was not ordinary, it came from the place where the earth met the sky, where the spirit world touched the living. To use these tools without purifying them first would be a desecration. The hunters themselves were no less important than the tools they carried. The purification of their bodies and minds was just as vital as the preparation of their weapons. The night before the hunt, they would retreat to the forest alone, to cleanse themselves spiritually. In silence, they would stand by the river, feeling the cold rush of the water against their skin, each drop washing away the impurities of the world. Their minds needed to be free of distractions, their hearts open to the spirits of the forest. In those moments, the connection between the hunters and the bear deepened. They were not merely preparing to kill an animal, they were preparing to enter the bear's world, to ask for its blessing and its power. As the morning of the hunt arrived, the atmosphere grew heavier, filled with a sacred weight. The village had gathered, but not just the hunters. This was a community event, one that required the participation of everyone. The women, the children, the elders, all took part in the rituals. It was said that the bear's spirit would be felt by all, not just those who would venture into the forest. The women would offer their blessings, chanting songs of strength and courage, calling upon the bear to bless the men with skill and precision. The children would hold flowers in their hands, offering them to the spirits, symbolizing the hope for a successful hunt that would provide for the whole community. The elders, with their years of wisdom, would offer their prayers, reminding the hunters of the sacredness of what they were about to do. As the ritual continued, the hunters began their preparations in earnest. Each man was given a specific role, each task essential to the success of the hunt. There were the trackers, whose job it was to find the bear's trail. There were those who would handle the weapons, ensuring that everything was in place. The leaders would stand at the front, guiding the group, their voices strong and steady, calling the hunters to their task. Every role was a part of the greater whole, none was more important than the other. This was not just a hunt, it was a sacred duty, and each individual played a crucial part in it. The preparations took hours, but time itself seemed to bend in these moments. The world outside the village seemed far away, as if the hunt was a thing outside of ordinary time. Everything that was done had been done before, countless times. The men who stood in that circle had ancestors who had done the same. Their fathers, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers had walked this path before them. The fire in the center of the circle burned brighter now, the smoke rising into the sky like a message to the gods. The scent of burning herbs filled the air, mixing with the smell of the earth and the forest. Each hunter took his turn at the fire, holding his hands above the flames as he offered a silent prayer to the bear's spirit. The air around them seemed to hum, as though the spirits were listening, waiting. The hunter would speak his words quietly, the promise of the hunt, a promise to honor the bear's life, to offer thanks for the blessings it would bring, and to seek forgiveness for the blood that would be shed. No hunter would go into the woods without first making this sacred offering. They knew the balance between life and death was delicate, and that the hunt was not a one-sided affair. The bear was not just a source of food and resources, it was a spiritual being, and the respect shown to it in these rituals would determine the success of the hunt. Finally, as the sun rose fully into the sky, casting a golden light over the land, the time had come. The hunters gathered their tools, the knives and spears, each item now filled with the weight of prayer and blessing. They stepped into the woods, not as conquerors, but as humble servants, ready to give thanks for the life that would sustain them. The forest whispered around them, the wind moving softly through the branches, as though the earth itself was breathing with them. Every step was taken with reverence, every movement deliberate, for they knew they were walking in a sacred space. In the quiet moments before they moved deeper into the forest, the shaman's voice echoed through the trees, calling upon the spirits once more. It was a reminder that this hunt was not theirs alone, but a shared experience with the bear, with the land, and with the ancestors who had walked this path before them. The bear was not just an animal. It was a gift, a being of strength and wisdom that would sustain the people. And as the hunters disappeared into the shadows of the forest, the rest of the community stood together, holding their breath, waiting for the hunt to unfold. The rituals were complete. The preparations were done. And now, in the silence of the woods, the bear and the hunters would meet, not as enemies, but as equals in a sacred dance that had been passed down through the ages. The forest was alive with the sound of rustling leaves, the scent of damp earth and pine needles heavy in the air. The morning mist clung to the ground, and the hunters moved through it like shadows, their every footfall careful, deliberate. There was no rush. No words were spoken. The only sound was the quiet rhythm of breathing, the distant chirp of a bird, the whisper of the wind. Every hunter knew that this moment, this silence, held a weight far beyond the hunt itself. At the heart of the bear hunt lay a sacred truth: the animal was not just a creature of flesh and blood. It was a symbol, a force of nature, an embodiment of the wild and untamed. To hunt the bear was to challenge something ancient, something primal. The bear was not merely an adversary to be slain, but a being to be understood, a spirit to be honored. Its strength, its wisdom, its power were not just qualities of an animal, they were qualities of the earth itself, woven into the very fabric of existence. As the hunters moved deeper into the forest, the symbolism of the bear grew clearer. The bear was both a literal adversary and a spiritual one. It represented the fierce forces of nature, the storms, the winters, the dark forests, the unknown places where humans dared not tread. In many ways, it was a reflection of the inner struggles that each man must face in his own life. It was not just the body of the bear that had to be overcome, but the strength of its spirit, the essence of what it stood for, power, survival, and the untamable wildness of life itself. The act of hunting the bear was a ritual of transformation. To stand face to face with such an opponent was to be tested, not only by the creature in front of you but by the deeper parts of yourself. Fear, uncertainty, courage, and resolve all danced in the same moment. The hunt was not simply a task, it was a rite of passage. The young hunters, those who had not yet proven themselves, knew that this would be their trial, their test of worthiness. A young man could only truly become a hunter when he faced the bear and survived. It was the ultimate initiation, a way to cross from boyhood into manhood, from innocence into experience. The significance of this trial was more than physical. It was about conquering the fear that gripped the heart when you first faced the unknown. The bear, massive and powerful, represented the forces in life that could not be controlled, the wildness of nature, the unpredictability of the world. The hunt forced the young men to confront these forces, to prove their strength, their patience, and their spirit. It was a test of endurance, of inner resolve, and of respect for the world around them. For the elder hunters, those who had faced the bear before, the hunt held a different kind of meaning. It was a way to reaffirm their place in the world. These men were no longer just hunters, they were guardians of tradition, teachers of the young, leaders of the community. They carried with them the wisdom of years spent in the forest, and it was their duty to pass that knowledge on. The bear hunt was not just about the physical act of hunting, it was about sharing stories, passing on skills, and reminding the younger hunters of the sacred nature of what they were doing. The older men knew that the hunt was not just a chance to show strength, it was an opportunity to teach humility. The bear, for all its power, was not to be feared in the sense that a man would fear his own death. The bear was respected, revered for its strength and wisdom. The real fear came from dishonoring the hunt, from failing to uphold the sacred bond between the hunters and the land. The young hunters would learn this lesson in their own way, when they faced the bear and saw in its eyes the same wildness that lived within them. As the hunters closed in on their prey, the tension grew. The air was thick with anticipation. There was no turning back now. The young hunters, their hearts racing, could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on them. This was more than just a physical hunt, it was a battle for their own souls, a confrontation with the forces of nature and with themselves. Would they be able to stand firm? Would they show the courage to face the bear and claim victory? The bear, in the hunter's eyes, was both an adversary and a teacher. It was a force that could not be easily overcome. In its great power, it taught humility. In its wisdom, it taught patience. And in its spirit, it taught respect. The hunt was not simply about conquering the bear. It was about understanding it. The bear, in its own way, was both the challenge and the answer, the guide to manhood, the path to understanding the balance between life and death, the cycle of nature. As the bear was finally cornered, the air was charged with a mix of fear and awe. The men circled around it, their hearts pounding, the final moment drawing near. The young hunters looked to the elders for guidance, but it was clear, this was their trial to face. The bear, fierce and defiant, stood its ground, its eyes burning with a challenge of its own. It was the final test, the confrontation between man and beast, spirit and flesh. The moment that the first arrow flew, time seemed to stretch. The crack of the bow echoed through the forest, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The hunt was no longer just about the hunters and the bear. It had become something larger, something spiritual. This was the crossing of a threshold, the proving of strength and character. For the young hunters, the moment was both terrifying and exhilarating. The bear, with all its might, stood as the last test, the final obstacle before they could truly claim their place as men of the forest. And as the bear's spirit passed into the next world, it was a reminder that the hunt was not about destruction, but about renewal. The bear's life would continue in the lives of those it protected, in the stories passed down through the generations, in the sacred bond between the hunter and the hunted. This was the cycle of life, the eternal dance of nature. As the men stood together, watching the end of the hunt unfold, they knew that they had not just conquered an animal. They had faced something far deeper, something within themselves. The bear was both adversary and teacher, a symbol of life's unyielding force. And in the end, they had passed the test. The forest was waking up. The first light of dawn filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the mossy ground. The chill of the night still lingered in the air, but the warmth of the coming day was already pushing it back. The men gathered quietly on the edge of the village, their breath visible in the cool morning air, their faces set with determination. Today was the day the hunt would begin. It wasn't just a hunt. It was a sacred event that tied the hunters to the land, to the animals, to the spirits of the forest that watched over them. Each hunter had been preparing for this moment for weeks, if not longer. Now, it was time to step into the woods. The time had come to face the bear, and with it, face the wild heart of the earth itself. The men moved as one, their steps synchronized, each one knowing his place in the group. They had been through this before. The younger hunters, their hearts racing with a mix of excitement and fear, kept close to the older men, who led the way. Every hunter had his role, some would track the bear's path, others would hold the tools that would bring the hunt to its end, and still others would wait in silent vigil, ready to strike when the time was right. But before they could enter the forest, there were rituals to perform. The hunters stopped at the edge of the woods, their eyes scanning the trees, the silence thick around them. The shaman stepped forward, his voice low and steady. He murmured prayers, calling on the spirits of the forest, asking for permission to enter, asking for the bear's spirit to guide them and grant them strength. The wind shifted, as though in response. For a brief moment, the trees seemed to sigh, the forest exhaling, as if it, too, was ready for the hunt to begin. The shaman's voice grew stronger as he finished his chant, and the hunters all made a silent vow. This hunt was not just for them, it was for the community. For the family. For the future. They were not just seeking meat, they were seeking connection, balance, and understanding. The bear, in its strength, represented the very spirit of the wild. It was a force of nature that could not be defeated by brute strength alone. The hunt was about more than just skill with a bow or spear. It was about respect, patience, and listening to the forest. As the ritual ended, the hunters began to move into the woods. Their pace was slow at first, careful, deliberate. The forest was dense, the trees tall and ancient, their trunks twisted with age. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Every step seemed to echo in the stillness, and yet, the men walked with purpose. The hunt had begun. The younger hunters felt the weight of it all. Their eyes darted nervously around them, scanning for any sign of the bear, their ears straining for the sound of movement in the underbrush. They had heard the stories, of course. The bear was a creature of power, of unmatched strength. It could be a fierce opponent, one that demanded both respect and caution. They would have to be clever. They would have to outwit it, for no amount of bravery alone would see them through. The older hunters, on the other hand, had a quiet calm about them. They knew that the forest would give them what they needed if they were patient enough. They knew how to read the land, how to understand the subtle signs that the forest offered. The broken branches, the footprints in the mud, the shift in the wind, it all told a story, one that led them closer to their prey. They had been through this before, and they understood the importance of staying calm. The hunt was as much about the mind as it was about the body. The hours stretched on as the group moved deeper into the forest. The sun was rising higher, casting a golden glow on the trees, turning the forest into a quiet cathedral of light and shadow. The hunters moved in silence, communicating with hand signals and brief glances. Every sound seemed amplified in the stillness, twigs snapping underfoot, birds calling in the distance, the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Every detail mattered. The men's hearts beat in rhythm with the forest, the tension growing with each step. Then, as the day wore on, they found the first sign, fresh tracks, large and deep, imprinted in the soft earth. The bear had passed through here not long ago. The group paused, gathering around the tracks. The young hunters looked at them with wide eyes, awe and fear mixing in their chests. The older men nodded, their faces unreadable. This was the moment they had been waiting for. It was time to move quickly, before the bear had a chance to move further away. The strategy began to take shape. The hunters would spread out, forming a loose circle around the bear's path, tightening it gradually until the animal was surrounded. They moved carefully, trying to stay downwind, to remain unseen by the bear. But the forest was not always kind. The bear, with its sharp senses and its knowledge of the land, could easily sense the hunter's presence if they weren't careful. It wasn't long before the tension became unbearable. The air was thick with anticipation. The young hunters, their eyes wide and their breaths shallow, could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on them. They were close now. The first sign of the bear would be their signal. When they saw it, they would have only moments to react. The rhythm of the hunt would quicken, the pace would change, and they would be drawn into a dance with the wild. Then, a rustle. A crack of a twig. The bear was near. The older men motioned for silence. Everyone froze, their hearts pounding. The young hunters held their breath, their bodies tensed, ready to move at the slightest sound. The forest had become a living thing. Every leaf, every shadow, every breeze seemed to be part of the hunt now. The world outside the trees had fallen away. There was only the bear, and the men who followed it, bound to it by an unspoken bond. In that moment, the connection between the hunters and the land felt deep and eternal. The bear was not just an animal. It was the forest itself. It was the wildness that lived in every hunter's heart. It was the cycle of the seasons, the changing of the weather, the ebb and flow of life. And as the men moved toward their prey, they knew that they were part of something greater. Something ancient. Something that had always been. The hunt had begun in earnest now, and every step, every sound, every breath mattered. The bond between the hunters and the forest had never felt more alive. The forest was still, almost too still. Even the birds had fallen silent, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. The moment had arrived. The bear, majestic and powerful, stood before them, a force of nature, fierce and wild. It was more than just an animal now. It was the spirit of the forest, the heart of the earth itself. And it was time to meet it. The hunters stood in a circle, their hearts pounding in their chests, but their faces calm, resolute. They had prepared for this moment, their minds clear, their thoughts steady. But even so, there was a heaviness in the air, a sense that what was about to happen was more than just a hunt. It was a crossing of worlds, the boundary between the living and the spiritual, between man and nature. The bear was not just a creature to be slain, it was a sacred being, deserving of respect and reverence. The young hunters, their hands trembling slightly, glanced at the older men, seeking guidance, a steadying presence. The older men nodded, their expressions unreadable, but there was a quiet understanding between them all. This moment was not one for fear or hesitation, it was a moment to honor the bear, to honor the life it had lived, and the spirit it carried with it. The act of killing the bear was a necessary part of the hunt, but it was not the end. It was only the beginning of a deeper connection, a moment of sacred passage that required great respect. With a single, synchronized movement, the hunters moved in closer. The air around them seemed to thicken, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath. The bear, sensing the change, stood its ground, its eyes watching them with an intelligence that felt almost human. Its massive chest rose and fell with each breath, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. And then, with a sharp cry, the final blow was struck. The sound was deafening. The bear roared, a primal cry that echoed through the trees, and the world seemed to shift. It was not just the end of an animal's life, it was a moment of transformation. The bear's spirit was leaving the physical world, but it was not vanishing. It would live on, and the hunters knew this. They had not come here to take life for the sake of it. They had come to honor it, to give the bear's soul a safe passage to the next world. The moment the bear fell, a silence descended over the group. No one spoke, no one moved. The air felt thick with the weight of the act that had just been committed. The young hunters stood frozen, their eyes wide as they took in the sight of the mighty creature lying still at their feet. It was hard to imagine that just moments ago, the bear had been full of life, full of strength. Now, it was gone, but the power it had carried was not lost. The shaman stepped forward, his face solemn. He lifted his hands to the sky, his voice soft but strong as he began the ancient prayer, a chant that resonated through the forest like the whisper of the wind. He asked for the bear's spirit to be honored, for the soul of the animal to find peace. It was not enough to simply take the life of the bear, they had to ensure its spirit was respected and cared for. The bear had given itself willingly to the community, to the hunters, but it was still a sacred being, one that deserved to be treated with reverence. The men knelt before the body, their heads bowed in respect. They offered prayers, words of gratitude for the life the bear had lived and the strength it had shared with them. They did not take its life lightly. It was a sacrifice, but it was also a gift that would nourish, protect, and sustain the people for another year. And for this, they were deeply grateful. The shaman, his voice still steady, moved around the body of the bear, tracing symbols in the air with his hands. The hunters followed suit, placing their hands on the bear's body, touching it with a mixture of reverence and awe. They felt the energy of the animal still pulsing beneath their fingertips, as though the bear's spirit was still present, guiding them. The bond between them and the bear was not broken. It had simply changed form. The bear was not just an animal to be hunted. It was a being that held great power, a being whose soul was intertwined with the very fabric of the land. The killing of the bear was not an end, but a part of a much larger cycle. It was a rite of passage for the hunters, yes, but it was also a moment of connection, a bridge between worlds. They had taken the life of the bear, but they had also received its spirit, its strength, its wisdom. The hunters knew that the work was far from over. There were still rituals to be performed, offerings to be made. The bear's body would be treated with the utmost care, for it was not just meat, it was the embodiment of the forest's power, a living symbol of the wild. The hunters would make sure to honor every part of the bear, from its fur to its bones, and they would offer thanks to the spirits that had guided them through the hunt. The shaman led them in the ritual, offering a piece of the bear's flesh to the fire, asking for the blessing of the spirits for the coming year. The smoke rose, curling into the sky, carrying with it the prayers of the men. The bear's spirit, they believed, would ascend, returning to the forest, to the great expanse of the wild from which it had come. For the hunters, this moment would stay with them forever. It would be etched into their hearts, a reminder of the sacredness of the hunt, of the connection between them and the creatures of the forest. They had given their thanks, paid their respects, and now, they would carry the memory of the bear with them always. It was not just a memory of the hunt, it was a memory of the bond they shared with the land, with the animals, and with each other. The death of the bear was the beginning of something new, a renewal of life, a deepening of the spirit, and a reaffirmation of their place in the world. The bear was heavy, but not in the way it had been before. It was still the mighty creature of the forest, yet now it was a symbol of something greater, a spirit that had already crossed into the other world. The hunters carried it carefully, reverently, draped across the shoulders of the men, and with each step they took, the forest seemed to bow with them. They walked slowly, almost as if the weight of what they had done was pressing down upon them, filling the air with a sense of quiet reverence. The village was still a few miles away, but it felt as though the world itself had paused, waiting for their return. The trees seemed to sway with a hushed murmur, as if the wind itself was whispering prayers to the earth. The procession was slow but steady, the hunters moving together as one, their faces set in a quiet, knowing calm. Behind them, the women and children walked, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and something deeper, gratitude, perhaps, or a sense of connection to the ancient rhythms that still pulsed through their lives. There was no joy in their faces, not the triumphant kind one might expect after such a hunt. Instead, there was a solemnity, an understanding that this was not just a return from the forest. This was a return from a spiritual journey, a sacred act that had bridged the living and the spirit world. The bear, though dead, still held its power. It was still a part of them, a link between the earth and the heavens, between the people and the wild. As they entered the village, the first thing they saw was the smoke rising from the hearths. The village was alive, but it was a quiet kind of life, full of anticipation and reverence. The women and elders were waiting, standing in respectful silence as the hunters approached. Their hands were raised in a gesture of blessing, their eyes focused on the bear that lay across the men's shoulders. There were no words spoken, only the steady rhythm of the hunters' footsteps and the soft rustling of the trees. When they reached the village center, the ceremony began. It was not loud, not boisterous, it was a quiet, reverent gathering. The men carefully lowered the bear to the ground, and the shaman stepped forward. The air was thick with the weight of the moment, as though even the earth itself was holding its breath. The shaman began to speak in soft, steady tones, his voice carrying with it the ancient language of the spirits. His words were like a bridge, connecting the world of the living with the world of the dead. He asked for blessings for the people, for the land, for the animals, and for the spirits that had guided them. He spoke of the bear's soul, of its journey to the other world, and of the gifts it had brought with it. He thanked the spirit of the bear for its sacrifice, and he asked that it be honored and treated with respect. As the shaman spoke, the villagers gathered around, joining in the chant. The women and children swayed softly, their eyes closed, feeling the power of the moment. The men knelt beside the bear, their heads bowed, their hands resting on the earth. This was not a moment for pride, but for reverence, for a deep, quiet understanding of the sacredness of what had just occurred. The bear was not just food. It was not simply meat to be consumed. It was a spirit, a living force that had given itself to the community, and the people knew they owed it everything. The hunters had not just taken the bear's body, they had taken its spirit with them. And so, the ceremony was not complete until the spirit was honored, until it was properly returned to the land. The bear was prepared with care. Its fur was removed, its bones cleaned, its meat carefully divided. Each part of the bear was treated with the utmost respect, as though it were a gift from the heavens themselves. The villagers would use every part of the bear, from its bones to its skin, to ensure that nothing was wasted. But more than that, they would carry the bear's spirit with them, honoring it in everything they did. The women and children gathered around, their voices rising in song, a soft, haunting melody that filled the village and echoed through the trees. The song was ancient, passed down from generation to generation. It was a song of thanks, of honoring, of connection. It was the people's way of saying that they understood the sacredness of the hunt, that they understood the bear's place in their world, and that they would carry its spirit with them always. As the evening wore on, the village came alive with activity. The meat of the bear was prepared, cooked, and shared among the people. It was not just food, it was a part of the spirit that had come with the hunt. The villagers sat together, eating, laughing, and talking, but always with an awareness of the sacredness of the meal. Every bite was a reminder of the bear's gift, a gift that would sustain them through the long, cold winter. Every part of the bear was used, its bones were shaped into tools, its fat rendered into oil for cooking and lighting fires, its fur made into clothing. Nothing was wasted. Nothing could be. As the night drew on and the fire flickered low, the people gathered again around the hearth. The shaman spoke softly, his voice calm and steady. He reminded the people that the bear was not just a source of food. It was a teacher, a guide, a spirit that would continue to watch over them. It was a part of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth that ran through all things. And so, as they ate and celebrated, they were not just honoring the bear's body, but its spirit as well. The ritual was complete, but its effects would last long after the fires had died down. The village had shared in something far greater than a hunt. They had shared in a communion with the spirit of the earth, with the wild forces that moved around them. The bear had given itself to them, and they had returned it to the land with respect, with gratitude, and with love. Its spirit would continue to guide them, to protect them, and to remind them of the deep, sacred connection they had with the wild, the land, and each other. The cycle would continue, and with each new year, they would remember the bear, the forest, and the life that flowed through it all. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the village. The air was thick with the earthy scent of freshly cooked meat, mingling with the fragrance of pine and smoke. The villagers gathered around, their faces illuminated by the soft orange glow, their eyes wide with anticipation. They had been waiting for this moment, the moment when the hunt, the prayers, the sacrifices, and the spirit of the bear would finally come together in the sacred feast. The bear's flesh sizzled over the fire, its rich aroma filling the air as it cooked slowly. The men who had hunted it, their hands still stained with the blood of the animal, carefully cut the meat into portions, each slice an offering, each piece a part of the spirit that had been given to them. The women stood nearby, arranging the meat on platters, their hands moving with practiced grace, as though they were preparing something much more than food. In their eyes, this was not just a feast, it was a communion, a sacred act that would bind the community together in a bond deeper than blood. The village was silent now, save for the crackling of the fire and the soft murmurs of the people. The children, wide-eyed with wonder, sat on the ground, waiting for the signal to begin. They had been told that this feast was more than just a meal, it was a ritual, a ceremony that connected them with the very heart of the earth, the spirit of the bear. They could feel the weight of it in the air, the heaviness that hung like a cloak around them, urging them to honor the sacredness of what had been given. The shaman stood at the head of the gathering, his face solemn, his eyes distant, as if seeing something beyond the village, beyond the fire. He raised his arms in the air, his voice steady but full of reverence as he spoke the ancient words of blessing. The people listened intently, their hearts beating in time with the rhythm of his chant. The words were old, older than the village, older than the trees, but they carried with them the weight of history, the weight of the ancestors who had walked this land before them. In those words, the bear's spirit was called back. It was not just a creature of flesh and bone, it was a spirit, a force that had given its life for the survival of the people. The shaman's chant was a prayer, a thanks, a way of welcoming the bear into the community's soul. With each word, the people's hearts swelled with gratitude, a silent promise to honor the spirit that had been taken. The bear had given itself willingly, and now, through this feast, its spirit would live on in them. As the chant came to an end, the silence grew deeper. The air seemed to hold its breath. The shaman lowered his arms, and the first pieces of meat were offered. A portion was set aside, untouched, as an offering to the spirits of the forest, to the earth, to the wind, and to the sky. This part of the bear would not be eaten, it was meant to return to the land from which it had come, a final act of respect. Then, the feast began. The villagers took their portions, passing the platters from hand to hand, offering each other pieces of the sacred meal. There was no rushing, no greed. Each person took what they needed, and as they did, they spoke words of thanks, quiet prayers of gratitude for the bear, for the land, and for the community. The children watched, learning the importance of this moment, learning how the flesh of the bear was not just sustenance, but a symbol of connection, a bridge between the earth and the heavens, between the living and the dead. The food was rich and flavorful, but it was more than just nourishment. It was a spiritual offering, a way of giving back what had been received. With every bite, the bear's spirit was honored, its strength, its wisdom, and its courage woven into the very fabric of the people. The bear had been a hunter, a mighty force of the forest, and now it was part of the people's strength. Its power flowed through them as they ate, giving them the energy to survive, to thrive, and to continue their lives in balance with the land. Laughter rang out as the meal continued, soft and joyful, but never without reverence. The food was shared, and with it, the community itself became stronger. There was no hierarchy in this feast, no division. The young shared with the old, the men with the women, the hunters with the gatherers. Everyone ate, everyone shared, and in doing so, they affirmed their place in the world. They were part of something larger than themselves, part of a cycle that had been going on for as long as the land had existed. As the night grew darker, the fire flickered low, and the feast slowed to a quiet hum. The bear had given its flesh, and in return, the people had given their thanks, their respect, and their unity. But the ceremony was far from over. The feast was not just about food, it was about the bond between the people and the land, between the living and the spirit world. The rituals performed at the table were a reminder that the bear was not just food, it was a gift, a sacred offering from the earth itself. The shaman continued to walk among the people, offering blessings, speaking quietly to those who needed comfort or guidance. The villagers sat together, reflecting on the bond they shared, feeling the weight of the bear's sacrifice, and understanding that the feast was not an end, but a continuation of a sacred cycle. The bear's spirit would live on, not just in their memories, but in the way they honored the land, the animals, and each other. The fire died down, the last embers glowing softly in the dark, and the people began to drift away, their hearts full, their minds at peace. The feast had been more than a meal, it had been a celebration of life, a ritual that transformed the physical into the spiritual. As they returned to their homes, the memory of the bear, and the connection it had forged, would stay with them, woven into the very fabric of their lives. It was a bond that could never be broken, a promise to continue living in harmony with the earth, just as the bear had lived, with strength, with respect, and with courage. The bear lay in front of the village, its body wrapped in a blanket of respect and sorrow. Its fur, once thick and strong, now lay still, a quiet reminder of the immense power that had been, just hours before, the heart of the forest. The air was heavy with the weight of the sacrifice, and the people gathered around it in silence. The feast had passed, but the true ritual, the one that could not be rushed, had only just begun. The shaman led the way, his presence commanding yet soft. His face was solemn, the lines of age carved deep, but in his eyes, there was a glimmer of something else, something old, something that came from the very earth itself. His words, when he spoke, were quiet and deliberate, as if he were listening to something beyond the crowd, beyond the present moment. The people stood in reverence, waiting for the ceremony to unfold. It was said that the bear's spirit would not simply vanish with the death of its body. It was a creature of the forest, of the wild, a being that carried with it the soul of the earth, the strength of the land. To take its life was not an end, but a transition, a return to something larger than the animal itself. The bear was both the hunter and the hunted, and in death, it would return to the earth, its spirit would find its way back into the trees, the rivers, the sky. But only if the rituals were performed with care, with respect, with gratitude. The first act was the burial. The earth was soft beneath the bear, but there was a ritual to the digging, a rhythm to the way the shovel bit into the ground. The men who had hunted the bear worked together, their movements practiced, almost reverent, as they prepared the grave. It was not just a hole in the ground, it was a portal, a doorway for the spirit to pass through. The earth that covered the bear would not be just soil, it would be the final resting place of the forest soul, a place where the bear could return to the land it had protected for so long. The women, too, had their part to play. They moved silently, bringing with them offerings, berries, herbs, small tokens that held meaning beyond their simple appearance. The offerings were laid beside the grave, their presence a symbol of the life the bear had lived, and the life it would continue to nurture even after its death. The bear's spirit, the people believed, would not leave empty-handed. These offerings were meant to show respect, to ensure that the spirit would be content as it made its way back to the forest. As the grave was finally prepared, the shaman took his place. He stood beside the bear, his hands raised to the sky, his eyes closed in deep concentration. His voice rang out, soft yet powerful, as he began the chant. It was a prayer, a blessing, a call to the bear's spirit. In his words, the bear was not a beast, but a being of the divine, a creature connected to the gods, to the forces of nature. The shaman's words were not just for the bear's spirit, they were for the people as well, to remind them of the bond that had been forged in the hunt, in the feast, in the very earth that they walked upon. The chant filled the air, rising and falling like the wind through the trees, like the river's song, like the rhythm of the earth itself. The people listened, their hearts heavy with understanding. They knew that the bear was not just an animal, it was a spirit, a protector, a guide. It had given its life, and in return, it asked for something more, something that could not be given through mere words or offerings. The bear's spirit needed to know that it was respected, that it was not forgotten, that its life had meaning beyond the hunt. When the chanting ceased, the shaman turned to the people. His face was still, but his eyes held the weight of the moment. He instructed them in a final act, a way to ensure the bear's spirit would not seek vengeance, a way to send it peacefully into the afterlife, without anger or regret. It was said that if the bear's spirit was not properly honored, it could return, not as a guardian, but as an avenger, a force of nature bent on reclaiming what it had lost. The people knew the consequences of a poorly performed ritual. They knew the stories of hunters who had returned from the forest, only to find their lives cut short by the anger of the bear's spirit. To ensure the bear's peace, the people offered their own prayers. Each person stepped forward, one by one, and placed their hand on the earth, just above where the bear's body had been laid to rest. They whispered their words into the wind, their voices barely audible, but their meaning clear. They asked for forgiveness, for peace, for the bear's spirit to find its way back to the forest without anger or fear. Some spoke of their gratitude for the bear's life, for its strength and courage, for its protection. Others asked for guidance, for the bear to watch over them, as it had watched over the forest. The ritual lasted for hours, each offering, each prayer, an essential part of the process. It was a time to reflect on the connection between the living and the spirit world, a time to acknowledge that all life, human and animal, was part of a larger cycle, one that could not be broken without consequences. When the last prayer was spoken, the shaman lowered his hands, and the people stood in silence. The earth had been returned to its natural state. The grave was filled, the offerings scattered across the ground. The bear's spirit had been honored, its peace ensured. The villagers slowly began to disperse, but the weight of the ritual remained in the air, a presence that could not be ignored. As the sun set behind the trees, casting long shadows over the village, the bear's spirit was gone. But its memory lingered, not just in the earth, but in the hearts of those who had witnessed its passing. They knew that the bear had given them more than just food or strength, it had given them a lesson in respect, in balance, and in the sacredness of all life. And though the bear's body had returned to the earth, its spirit would forever remain in the forest, watching over them, guiding them, and ensuring that the cycle of life and death continued in harmony. The night was thick with silence, the kind that presses against the soul, making the air feel heavy with both presence and absence. In the distance, the low hum of the forest echoed through the trees, a song only those who listened carefully could hear. And though the forest was alive with the stirrings of nature, something greater lingered in the shadows, a power, a presence, watching, waiting. The people believed it was the spirit of the bear, still there, even after death. It was a spirit that did not simply leave the body behind. It remained, not in the way we think of spirits wandering through the dark, but more like a guardian, pervasive, strong, and deeply connected to the land it had once roamed. The bear had not been just an animal, not merely a hunter in its own right. It had become something more, a bridge between the human world and the spirit world. To the hunter, the bear was not only a foe to be overcome but a protector, a figure that held sway over the wilderness. When the bear died, it did not disappear. It transformed. And it watched over its family, its descendants, forever. The hunter's family would feel its presence in subtle ways. It would be in the rustle of the trees, in the silence that fell just before a storm, in the quiet understanding shared between the old and the young, the strength of the earth itself. There was a bond that connected them to the bear's spirit, and that connection was one of reverence and respect. The hunter's family would honor that bond, knowing that the bear's spirit had not left the world but had instead woven itself into the fabric of their lives. It was said that the bear's spirit would protect those who had been worthy of its sacrifice. The hunter's family would find luck in their harvests, strength in their bodies, and wisdom in their decisions, for the spirit of the bear was their guardian. But this protection came with a price: respect. The people knew that the bear's spirit, powerful as it was, could also be a foreboding presence, a reminder of the strength it carried in life. If the rituals were not performed properly, if the bear was not honored as it should be, the spirit could turn from protector to avenger, its anger swift and merciless. There were stories of hunters who had taken the life of a bear and failed to honor its spirit, only to find themselves met with misfortune. It was said that the bear could find its way into the hearts of the men and women who had disrespected it, bringing illness or bad luck, sometimes even death. The people feared the wrath of the bear's spirit, knowing it could return with vengeance, its eyes never far from the hunter's family. The bear did not forget easily, and its memory stretched across generations. But when treated with respect, the bear's spirit would guide. It would offer protection to those who understood its power, those who knew that it was both a part of the land and of the people, woven into the very bones of the earth. In the long winter months, when the forest was still and quiet, the people would often speak of the bear, telling stories that carried its spirit from generation to generation. The bear would live on in the stories, in the songs, in the rituals that bound the people to the forest. There were specific rites designed to keep the bear's spirit close, to remind the people of their connection to the animal, to the land. These rites were not to be taken lightly. Every gesture, every word spoken during the rituals, carried weight, for the people knew that their bond with the bear's spirit was fragile. One mistake, one misstep, and the connection could be broken. The shaman would lead the rites, calling on the bear's spirit to remain with the family, to continue to guard them. But the people did not only call on the bear when they needed protection. They called upon it to express gratitude, to give thanks for the bear's sacrifice, for its strength. The rituals would often take place during the changing of the seasons, when the earth was shifting from one cycle to the next. The bear's spirit, linked so deeply to the land, would be honored during these times, as the people moved from the long cold of winter into the warmth of spring. This transition was a powerful time, a time to reaffirm their bond with the bear, to offer prayers for a bountiful harvest and a safe journey through the seasons. The people believed that the bear's spirit could also be a teacher. It was said that those who were open to its guidance would receive messages in dreams or visions. The bear, though silent, spoke in ways that transcended words. It would teach lessons about strength and resilience, about the delicate balance between life and death. It was a reminder that the hunter's world was not separate from the world of the forest, the two were intertwined, and only by honoring that connection could the hunter and his family survive and thrive. In the dead of night, under a blanket of stars, the people would often gather to listen to the elders speak of the bear's spirit. The stories were shared in soft voices, in reverent tones, for the bear was not just a part of their past, it was still very much alive in their hearts, guiding them in the decisions they made and in the paths they chose. The bear's spirit was not bound by time. It was eternal, as timeless as the forest itself. And when a child came of age, ready to face the world of men and beasts, the bear's spirit was there to guide them. It would be a subtle presence, a whisper on the wind, a flash of shadow in the trees. The child would know it was time to carry forward the teachings of the bear, to live with the strength, the wisdom, and the quiet power that the spirit offered. They were not alone in the world, for the bear was with them, watching, guiding, and protecting, just as it had done for their ancestors before them. The spirit of the bear was not just an idea, not just a story. It was a force, alive and present in the world, as real and as powerful as the forest itself. And as long as the people respected it, as long as they honored the sacred bond between human and animal, the bear's spirit would remain by their side, ever watchful, ever strong. The sound of rustling leaves echoes in the air, a whispering voice that has carried through the centuries. Every step taken on this sacred soil of Finland stirs with the memory of something ancient. And beneath the towering trees, something greater than just the earth itself calls to you, a force that has shaped the land and the people for generations. It is the spirit of the bear. For centuries, this mighty creature has been not just a part of nature, but the very soul of the Finnish people, a symbol of their strength, resilience, and connection to the land. The bear, in its power and mystery, has transcended the physical realm. It is both a protector and a reminder of the untamable forces of the wild. The people of Finland, with their fierce love for the forests and their reverence for nature, have come to view the bear not just as a creature of the wild, but as a mirror of their own spirit. This bond has stood the test of time, weaving the bear into the very fabric of Finnish identity. It is no wonder that the bear, in all its majesty, came to represent more than just a part of the natural world. It became a symbol of Finland itself. A symbol of endurance, of survival in harsh conditions, of the bond between the people and the land that nourished them. Just as the bear survives in the coldest winters, so too does the Finnish spirit persist, even when faced with adversity. Through wars, hardships, and the winds of change, the bear's image has remained at the heart of Finland's cultural identity. In the past, the connection between the Finnish people and the bear was sacred, woven into their everyday lives. The bear hunt, a once essential part of survival, became a ritual of profound spiritual importance. It was not a simple act of taking life, it was a ceremony, one that demanded respect and reverence for the spirit of the bear. This bond between the hunter and the hunted, between the people and the earth, became a defining part of the Finnish character. It was in the shared silence before the hunt, the rituals that followed, and the understanding that the bear was not simply killed but transformed into a spirit that would live on. But as centuries passed, the relationship between the Finnish people and the bear began to evolve. The forests, once full of the bear's presence, became more distant. The land changed, and with it, the way of life shifted. The bear, once seen as an essential part of everyday survival, became more of a myth, a story told by the elders, a legend to be passed down through generations. Yet, despite the changes, the bear remained a part of Finnish culture, still revered and respected in ways that could not be forgotten. In the Finnish national mythology, the bear holds a place of great importance. The ancient stories tell of the bear as a divine creature, a spiritual being that carried the wisdom of the forest and the strength of the earth. In these myths, the bear was not just an animal, it was a protector, a guide, and a force that shaped the world. These tales, passed down from one generation to the next, are more than just stories, they are the embodiment of the Finnish spirit, echoing with the same strength, honor, and respect that the people have for the bear. The connection between the bear and Finnish mythology goes beyond mere symbolism. The bear is woven into the very stories that define the nation. It is a figure of power and mystery, one that embodies the forces of nature and the primal instincts that are part of the human spirit. The bear is both a hero and a symbol of the untamed world, and through these myths, the Finnish people have come to see themselves in the image of the bear. In the same way that the bear survives, adapting to the changing world, so too does the Finnish spirit persist, adapting to the ebb and flow of time. There is something timeless in this connection. It is not just a bond between humans and nature, it is a reflection of the eternal struggle between civilization and the wilderness, between the known and the unknown. The bear, with its strength and wildness, represents the force of nature that is never truly tamed, and yet, through the bear ceremonies, the Finnish people have learned to live in harmony with that wildness. The hunt, the rituals, and the respect for the bear's spirit have become symbols of the balance that the Finns have sought for centuries, finding a way to live alongside nature while honoring its power. Even as modern Finland has changed, as cities rise and technology advances, the spirit of the bear endures. It is still present in the hearts of the people, a reminder of their roots, their heritage, and their unbreakable connection to the land. The image of the bear has become a national emblem, a figure of strength and pride, deeply embedded in the Finnish identity. It speaks to the soul of the nation, reminding the people that no matter how far they may travel from their ancient traditions, they are never far from the land that has shaped them. In the national consciousness, the bear is more than just a part of folklore, it is the embodiment of the Finnish heart. It stands as a symbol of courage, endurance, and the deep connection between people and the earth. The mythological tales of the bear live on, carried in the minds of the people, passed from generation to generation, reminding them that the bear's spirit is still with them, still guiding them, still protecting them. From the legends of old to the present day, the bear remains an enduring figure in Finnish culture. It is a symbol of what it means to be Finnish, a people who have always lived with one foot in the wilds of the forest, and the other in the changing world. The bear is not simply a creature of the past. It is a living, breathing part of Finland's soul, one that continues to shape the identity of the nation, to inspire pride, and to remind the people of the strength that lies within them. And as long as the bear's spirit endures, so too will the spirit of Finland. As the last echoes of the drumbeat fade into the cold northern wind, something heavy lingers in the air. The world that once belonged to the sacred bear ceremony, with its rhythms of reverence, rituals, and respect, slowly begins to disappear. Like the soft steps of a bear retreating into the forest, the traditions of the past fade into memory, and with them, the ancient connection between the people and the mighty animal. But what causes such a profound change? How does a practice, born of reverence and unity, wither and vanish? The answer is woven through time, shaped by forces both powerful and unrelenting. It begins with a shift, a quiet change that starts as a whisper but grows louder with each passing generation. The Christianization of Finland was more than just the arrival of a new faith, it was the beginning of the erasure of ancient traditions that had once defined the way of life for the people. As the Christian missionaries spread their influence, the old ways were seen not as sacred but as something to be condemned. The old gods, the spirits of the forest, and the rituals tied to them were all too closely associated with paganism, an ideology that the Church sought to abolish in favor of a more structured, monotheistic belief system. The bear ceremony, which had once been an act of deep reverence, a spiritual connection between human and animal, soon became a target. The act of hunting the bear, once considered an offering to the gods, was now viewed as something darker, superstitious, pagan, and irredeemable in the eyes of the new faith. The spirit of the bear, the ceremony surrounding its hunt, the respect that was once paid to it, these were all dismissed as backward, even dangerous. The ceremonies that once celebrated the bear as a divine creature began to fall under increasing pressure. They were no longer welcome in a world that was becoming increasingly shaped by Christian doctrine. The rituals that had been passed down for generations, from father to son, from grandmother to granddaughter, were suppressed. They were forced to hide in the shadows of the new faith. The old beliefs could no longer be practiced openly. People had to pretend they had forgotten them. As the years passed, the once strong connection to the bear, to the forests, and to the spirits of the earth weakened. The bear ceremony, which had once been the heartbeat of the community, began to transform into something else, something less tangible, less sacred. Where once people had gathered to honor the bear's spirit, they now gathered in silence, keeping their old traditions locked away in the corners of their minds and hearts. There were fewer and fewer places where the ritual could take place, and those who dared to continue it risked persecution. The change wasn't just spiritual. It was cultural. Finland was modernizing. The world was changing, and with it, the way people lived. As cities grew and industry spread, the forests where bears roamed were no longer the center of the Finnish world. People moved away from the land, seeking jobs in towns and cities, leaving behind the intimate relationship they had once shared with the wilderness. The bear, once revered as a force of nature, became less of a presence in the daily lives of the people. The forests were cleared, and the spirits of the old world began to fade. The modern world brought with it new priorities, new beliefs, and new ways of thinking. The bear, once seen as a spiritual guide, became just another creature in the wild, no different from any other animal. The ceremonies that had once surrounded its death lost their meaning in the face of progress. The rituals were no longer relevant to a world that was becoming more secular and less connected to the land. People, now disconnected from the rhythms of nature, saw the old ways as something archaic, something that belonged to a different time. But it wasn't just the march of time that caused the bear ceremony to decline. There was a deep, almost tragic, conflict between two worlds, the ancient world of paganism, where nature, gods, and animals were intertwined in a sacred bond, and the Christian world that sought to erase the traces of that past. The struggle between the two wasn't one of open violence, but of silence and suppression. The old ways weren't simply forgotten, they were actively pushed aside, replaced by a belief system that saw them as dangerous, heretical, and ungodly. Those who practiced the bear ceremony, those who continued to honor the spirit of the bear, found themselves caught between two worlds. On one side, they were guided by ancient traditions, rituals passed down from their ancestors, a deep respect for nature, and an understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. On the other side, they faced a new world, one where the teachings of the church held sway, where the old ways were seen as something to be erased, something to be ashamed of. The tension between these two forces, the pull of tradition and the force of modernity, left many people torn, their hearts heavy with the loss of something they could no longer openly embrace. The decline of the bear ceremony is more than just a loss of ritual. It is the loss of a deep connection to the earth, to the animals that roam its forests, and to the ancient spirits that once walked alongside the people. It is the loss of a worldview that saw everything in the natural world as sacred and interconnected. The bear, once a symbol of strength, of wisdom, and of the eternal cycle of life and death, became just a shadow in the collective memory. As Christianity spread its roots deeper into Finnish culture, the old ways were increasingly seen as something dark and forbidden. The bear ceremony, a powerful act of reverence and respect, was now something to be suppressed, forgotten, or hidden away. The forest, once alive with the presence of the bear's spirit, became quieter, its secrets buried beneath the weight of Christian doctrine and modernity. But even as the old ways faded, something remained. The bear, in its mysterious way, continues to haunt the hearts of those who remember. Though the ceremonies may no longer be practiced openly, the spirit of the bear is not entirely gone. It lives on in the stories, the memories, and the hearts of the people who once knew the sacred bond between hunter and hunted. It lives on in the quiet reverence for the land, the respect for the creatures that roam it, and the understanding that the past is never truly gone, it simply waits, like the bear itself, to return when the time is right. It starts with a whisper, almost imperceptible at first. A single voice, speaking the words long forgotten, echoing in the wind. Then, a murmur grows into a song, a rhythm that beats with the ancient pulse of the land. The bear, once sacred and revered, is no longer just a memory. It begins to stir again in the hearts of those who remember. Slowly, across the wide forests of Finland, a quiet revival begins, one that honors the old ways, brings back the sacred practices, and breathes life into the lost spirit of the bear ceremony. The desire to revive the bear ceremony was not born out of nostalgia alone. It was a calling, a recognition that something had been lost, something vital that connected the people to the land, to the animals, and to their ancestors. It was the recognition that the bear, with its power and mystery, was not just an animal, but a spirit, a part of the soul of the people. The desire to bring back the ceremony wasn't simply to relive the past, it was to reconnect with something deeper, something essential. In the villages, at the edges of the great forests, the first sparks of revival began to take root. It started in small circles, with people gathering to remember what had once been. They would meet quietly, with respect and reverence, to speak of the old ways. These gatherings were often simple, no grand rituals at first, just stories passed from one generation to the next. The tales of the bear hunts, the prayers whispered to its spirit, the dances that once echoed around the fire, they were brought back, bit by bit. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath, as if it too longed for the return of the ancient bond. Then, as more and more people came together, a spark of excitement began to grow. A few brave souls began to organize small ceremonies, recreating the rituals as best they could. These weren't grand festivals or public spectacles. They were quiet, sacred moments in the forest, where the old songs were sung once again, and the spirit of the bear was called upon with respect and care. The air was thick with the presence of the past, as if the forest itself remembered what it had lost. The restoration of the bear ceremony wasn't without its challenges. It wasn't enough just to remember the old rituals, the people had to make them meaningful again in the context of their modern lives. It took a deep understanding of the culture, a reverence for the past, and a recognition of the ever-present spirit of the land. In the small communities, there were those who carried the weight of the old knowledge. Elders who had lived through the transition from old to new, who had witnessed the erosion of traditions, were now the ones who held the keys to the sacred practices. They spoke of the bear as not just a creature but a teacher, a protector, a spiritual guide. These elders passed their knowledge on to younger generations, who were hungry to learn, eager to connect with the land and the spirit of the bear once more. The revival of the bear ceremony was more than just a return to an old practice. It was a reclamation of identity, a reclaiming of a lost connection with nature. With each song sung, each prayer spoken, there was a sense of healing, a feeling that the bond between the people and the land, though strained, had not been completely broken. The spirit of the bear, it seemed, had never truly gone away. It lingered, like a memory, waiting to be called upon again. As the years passed, the bear ceremony began to evolve, taking on new forms in an ever-changing world. Modern-day festivals emerged, and reenactments of the bear hunt became a way for people to honor the old traditions in a more public, celebratory way. The ceremonies were no longer confined to the quiet of the forest. They began to reach the larger community, drawing people from all walks of life, those who had always lived on the land and those who had long since left it but felt the pull of their heritage. These events were filled with music, dance, and the shared joy of rediscovery. They were a reminder that the spirit of the bear was still alive in the hearts of the people. But as much as these festivals were a celebration, they were also a reminder of the deep responsibility that came with the bear ceremony. The modern-day reenactments carried with them the same reverence as the original hunts had. There was a sacredness to them, a reminder that the bear was not just an animal to be hunted, but a spirit to be honored. Each reenactment, each festival, was a way to acknowledge the bear's power, its role as protector and teacher, and the lessons it imparted. Alongside these efforts, folklore scholars, cultural enthusiasts, and environmentalists played a crucial role in preserving the ceremony. These dedicated individuals understood that the bear ceremony wasn't just an artifact of the past, it was a living tradition, one that had to be nurtured and cared for. They worked tirelessly to document the old rituals, to record the stories, and to ensure that the knowledge was passed on to future generations. They knew that if the ceremony was to survive, it couldn't just be something preserved in history books. It had to be something lived, something experienced, something that continued to grow and evolve. Environmentalists, too, recognized the importance of the bear ceremony in preserving the natural world. The deep respect for the bear, for the forest, for the balance of life that had been integral to the ceremony, was something that resonated with the growing environmental movement. The ceremony was a symbol of the intimate relationship between people and the earth, a relationship that needed to be nurtured in a time when the natural world was increasingly threatened by human activity. In this modern world, where technology, urbanization, and rapid change often pull people further away from the natural world, the revival of the bear ceremony has become a way of reconnecting with something that was once lost. It's a reminder of the wisdom that the land holds, the teachings of the animals, and the sacredness of the earth beneath our feet. The bear, as both a spiritual guide and a symbol of strength, is more than just a part of Finland's past, it is part of its present and future. In every song sung around a fire, in every quiet moment spent in the woods, the spirit of the bear lives on. And as long as there are people who remember, who care, and who honor its spirit, the ceremony will never truly be gone. There is something unmistakable, almost electric, that sweeps over a crowd when a bear appears on screen or within the pages of a Finnish novel. A ripple of respect, admiration, maybe even a little fear. There, resting beneath the surface, is an ancient reverence, a spark that refuses to fade. In contemporary Finland, the bear is more than a memory, more than an emblem of the past. It is woven into the culture, present and powerful, a silent protector and a cherished symbol that holds meaning as deep as the roots of the forests themselves. Finns, young and old, carry this connection in subtle ways that linger just out of view, like shadows among the trees. Perhaps it's in the way they regard the wild, in the respect that echoes in the silence of the deep woods, or the way they pause before towering statues of bears that grace public squares. The bear, in all its forms, is still honored here. In Finnish literature, the bear appears not just as an animal but as an ancient symbol, a metaphor for the land, strength, and wisdom that often speaks more through its presence than any human voice could. Writers breathe life into its story, often casting it as both a figure of mystery and of kinship, a creature both familiar and unknowable. Tales of the bear continue to fill the pages of Finnish novels and poetry, with stories that reflect the bear's role not only in the natural world but also as a mirror to the Finnish spirit, a guardian, a guide, a quiet giant whose life pulses alongside that of the people. When readers encounter the bear within these stories, they feel its weight, its gaze, as if it were calling out from the depths of the forest, reminding them of where they came from and of the beauty that lies in their own strength and resilience. In Finnish art, the bear often graces paintings, carvings, and sculptures, each creation a testament to its place in the cultural heart of the nation. Artists across Finland depict the bear with reverence, capturing its majesty, its gentleness, its fierce power, reminding viewers of the bond between people and the land. Whether it stands as a looming figure in a winter landscape or a warm silhouette against the northern lights, the bear in Finnish art calls onlookers to look inward. Through each brushstroke and carving, it reminds the viewer of the beauty and power that lies in stillness, of the endurance and quiet strength that runs like a current through the Finnish soul. The bear roams too in modern Finnish media, appearing in films, television shows, and public art installations where its presence is both symbolic and real. It may be seen wandering the edges of a film scene, a silent nod to the wildness that still endures beyond the boundaries of the city, or portrayed as a wise creature, mysterious and deeply respected, never quite understood. In these portrayals, the bear is not a figure of fear but of connection, a reminder that the untamed parts of the world, and the untamed parts of ourselves, hold truths that are too important to ignore. Each portrayal of the bear, whether in a scene of quiet forest life or in the dramatic isolation of Finland's wilderness, reminds audiences that there is something in nature and in tradition that lives on, even as the world rushes forward. Finns also honor the bear in quiet, personal ways. While many may not follow the ancient rituals of their ancestors, the respect remains, now expressed in ways that fit the fabric of modern life. Some Finns light candles on cold winter nights, their glow flickering as they honor the spirit of the bear, as if seeking its protection and wisdom. Others may make pilgrimages to spots in the forest, places where bears are known to roam, leaving small offerings or simply sitting in silence, letting the presence of the wild seep into their bones. It is in these moments of solitude, away from the noise and rush, that they feel closest to the spirit of the bear, a quiet presence that lingers in the air. Even in Finland's cityscapes, where glass and steel towers reach towards the sky, the bear finds a place. Statues of bears stand proud in public squares, and carvings of its image grace the walls of libraries and schools. For passers-by, these figures serve as a reminder of resilience, strength, and respect for the natural world, a subtle encouragement to carry the spirit of the bear within them, to walk with quiet strength, and to remember the beauty of their land. The bear is present in the faces of those who gather at festivals, too, where people of all ages come together to celebrate traditions that reach back through generations. They sing songs, perform dances, and wear bear motifs that honor this guardian of the forest, this symbol of survival and continuity. To dance with the bear, even if only in spirit, is to celebrate all that is enduring in life, all that remains unbroken despite the passage of time. And for these people, honoring the bear is a way of honoring themselves, their families, and their homeland. Though many Finns may live in cities, surrounded by the conveniences and demands of modern life, the bear remains a figure of guidance and memory, a way of staying connected to the land and the values that have shaped their identity. In a secular world, where ancient rituals may no longer hold their original meaning, the essence of the bear endures in these new forms, quietly binding people together in shared memory, shared pride, and a shared love for the untamed beauty of their land. In Finland, the bear is more than just a part of folklore, it is an unspoken understanding, a source of unity, and a link to something vast, wild, and timeless. It is a reminder that some things cannot be tamed or forgotten, that there are still forces beyond human control that command respect and admiration. It is a symbol of all that is resilient in life, of the quiet power that endures despite change, of the spirit that cannot be erased. In the heart of every Finn, there is a piece of the bear, a whisper of the forest, a glimmer of the wild. And in a world that changes so quickly, it is this spirit that remains constant, a silent guardian, a quiet strength, a presence that endures. Through art, literature, and quiet moments in the forest, the bear continues to walk beside them, reminding them of who they are, where they came from, and the quiet power that lives within them all. The forest stands silent, a place where generations of Finns have known the bear as both a creature to be honored and an adversary to be feared. Yet today, the role of the bear is not what it once was, and neither is the role of the hunt. Now, the world stirs with voices questioning the ethics of hunting, wondering if the life taken in these sacred woods can be justified in a time when the bear is no longer a threat, and the spirit of survival has shifted to conservation. In the past, a hunt was a means of survival, a necessary balance between predator and prey, and a tradition that ran as deep as the rivers. Yet today, when many Finns have never even seen a bear in the wild, something fundamental has changed. For some, the idea of a hunt stands at odds with a world that now views the bear as a creature to be protected, a living symbol of the wilderness that must be preserved. In these changing times, hunting is no longer a shared ritual, and the sound of a hunter's footsteps in the forest may carry more questions than purpose. Yet for others, the hunt remains a way of connecting with ancestors, honoring the traditions that held communities together for generations. It is a way of engaging with the wild in a world where technology has distanced humans from the land. For these hunters, the act of hunting a bear is steeped in tradition, memory, and reverence. But today, even they feel the weight of the ethical questions, the awareness that each life taken from the forest touches more than just their own. It is not a simple act, it is a choice that tugs at the fabric of history and tradition, sparking a quiet, somber debate that follows them into the forest. In this era, with conservation efforts running parallel to cultural tradition, Finland faces a difficult question: how to honor its past while protecting its future. With each passing year, the bear becomes more than just an animal of the forest, it becomes a representative of wildness, a rare and powerful being that captures imaginations and hearts. This shift has brought new values into the woods, values that didn't exist in the time of ancient hunts. Now, people across Finland ask whether a single hunt, no matter how sacred, can justify the loss of one more bear from the forest. There are those who would argue that the hunt must end, that the world has changed too much to allow for the loss of such a powerful and endangered creature. For them, each bear carries more than just flesh and blood, it carries an ancient spirit that must be protected at all costs. They walk the same forests, but they see the bear through a different lens, one that cherishes each paw print, each breath as an irreplaceable piece of Finland's wilderness. Their voices echo in the chambers of government, in community meetings, in quiet gatherings under the trees where conservationists work to keep the bears safe. But in the middle ground, many Finns struggle with the complexity of honoring both their heritage and their commitment to conservation. In the quiet of the forest, where tradition and nature meet, the bear becomes more than a creature or symbol, it becomes a call to examine what is truly important. Hunters, conservationists, elders, and youth gather around the fire, each bringing their own perspectives, their own fears and hopes, as they search for an answer to a question with no easy answer: how to protect the bear and, in doing so, protect a part of themselves. As discussions continue, the bear's image appears not just in ancient symbols but in policy debates, art, and even modern law. Conservation efforts include protections, research, and tracking of bear populations, each step taken with care and respect. These steps are small, often hidden in the folds of bureaucratic language, but they echo the same reverence for the bear that once existed in ritual. For those who feel the weight of this responsibility, each law, each policy, is a modern version of the bear ceremony, a way of honoring the bear without taking its life. And so the debate continues, pulsing in the hearts of those who love the bear, those who fear it, those who wish to protect it, and those who feel it must remain a part of the living forest. Some see the ethical choice as clear, an end to the hunt, a commitment to the bear's survival, a way of embracing the modern age. Others see it as a balancing act, a way of keeping tradition alive even as they work to safeguard the future. And for some, the debate itself is a reminder that the bear is still here, still watching from the shadows, still calling forth the age-old questions of honor, respect, and survival. In Finland's forests, as winter snow blankets the ground, a single paw print left behind in the snow brings a quiet thrill to those who come across it. That track, delicate yet profound, is a reminder that the bear, both spirit and creature, still endures. And for each person who sees it, whether they wish to hunt or protect, there is a shared understanding that something ancient and sacred walks with them, something that ties them to their past, their future, and the land they call home. In the quiet shadows of ancient forests, a silent, watchful figure has lingered through time, the bear. For centuries, the bear has woven itself into the fabric of human stories, traditions, and fears across the world. It lives in the spirits of different peoples, revered and feared, worshipped and confronted, representing both a force of nature and a spiritual guide. The bear, grand, fierce, enduring, has captured the hearts and minds of cultures separated by oceans, yet bound by a shared respect and awe. In Finland, the bear ceremony held a sacred place in the lives of its people. For the Finns, the bear was not just a creature of the woods, it was a relative, a spirit tied to the land. The ceremony reflected their understanding that to take a bear's life was to approach a spiritual threshold, something to be done with reverence, never in haste. With each act of the ceremony, from the hunt to the burial, they acknowledged a bond that went beyond flesh, honoring the bear as an ancient kin. Across the world in the forests of North America, indigenous tribes of the Pacific Northwest, the Lakota, and the Cree also held the bear as a sacred figure. To the Lakota, the bear was a source of wisdom and strength, a healer whose power was respected and invoked. In stories passed down, the bear was seen as a powerful medicine, a being that walked the line between the physical world and the world of spirits. When hunters would go after a bear, it was never without a sense of humility, a request for forgiveness, and a recognition that the bear's life was not theirs to take lightly. In the quiet moments of their ceremonies, they would sing songs of gratitude, knowing the bear had offered itself so that they might live. In Siberia, where vast and endless landscapes stretch under harsh winters, the bear is also woven into the spiritual lives of the indigenous Evenki people. To them, the bear was not only a powerful being but an ancestor, a creature tied to the lineage of humans. They believed that the bear's spirit held secrets of life and death, wisdom about survival in the wilderness, and a connection to the forces of nature. When an Evenki hunter returned with a bear, rituals would mark the event, ceremonies where they spoke to the bear's spirit, asking for forgiveness, hoping that the bear would return in peace rather than anger. They, too, understood that the act of hunting was not just physical, it was spiritual, an encounter with a being that embodied both strength and wisdom. In Baltic lands, the bear stood as a powerful guardian and a symbol of courage. The Balts saw the bear as a being of dual natures, fierce protector and gentle provider. Stories of the bear's bravery and endurance filled their mythologies, and bear hunts were conducted with solemn respect. Every part of the bear, from its skin to its bones, was used with purpose, treated as sacred, with rituals and blessings to ensure the bear's spirit would remain peaceful, contented to dwell alongside them even in death. Despite the distances and differences between these cultures, one can sense a shared understanding, an instinctive reverence for the bear that transcends language and geography. Each culture saw the bear as more than an animal, they saw it as a mirror to themselves. To hunt the bear was to confront their own mortality, strength, and spirit. To honor the bear was to honor the forests and the wild places that nurtured them. But there is another layer that touches the heart more deeply, the bear as a teacher. From Finland to North America, from Siberia to the Baltics, the bear taught humans about humility, respect, and courage. The bear demanded that they step into the forest with open hearts, that they be worthy of the life they sought to take. It taught them that strength did not mean domination but balance, that courage came not from taking life recklessly but from honoring it wholly. In these lessons, the bear connected each culture to the wild spirit of the land, reminding them of their place within the world, of the power and fragility of life. In a way, the bear ceremonies were all acts of love, a love rooted in respect for life, for family, for tradition, for the unknown spirit that watched over them from the dark forests. They loved the bear because they saw in it a piece of their own soul, a reflection of the quiet power they each held. And in each ceremony, they found a way to say thank you, to honor the bear not with words but with actions, with rituals that turned fear and respect into a shared bond. Today, the echoes of these ceremonies linger. Though the hunts may have changed, though the world may have moved forward, the spirit of the bear remains, powerful and steady. In Finland, in North America, in Siberia, and the Baltics, the bear stands as a reminder of something timeless, something that reaches into the heart of human identity. It reminds us of a world that was once raw, wild, and shared, a world where humans walked softly, listened deeply, and knew that to face the bear was to come face to face with themselves. And in each culture, across continents, they responded not with fear alone, but with the strength to honor that ancient, untamed spirit. On a cold spring morning in Finland, young children stand on the edge of an ancient forest, holding their parents' hands. Their eyes are wide, watching as their elders speak softly about a tradition that has outlived generations. They hear whispers of the bear, the revered one, the silent guardian of the forest. But unlike in past times, the tales they hear are retold with a new urgency, almost as if the words alone might keep this tradition alive. The bear ceremony has existed as a bridge between the people and their wild, mystical landscape. For those children, who have never known a world without technology, it is hard to imagine life as it was for their ancestors, when every step into the forest held the weight of the past. Yet, standing there among the trees, they feel something stir. It's a reminder that the bear still matters, that the forest remembers each ritual, each song. And though the world beyond the forest has changed, there is a quiet hope that this connection can still be passed on to them, that they might carry it forward. Keeping this ceremony alive in a modern world is a delicate task. Elders, storytellers, and cultural guardians understand the risk of the ceremony fading into memory, yet they continue to teach, to speak, to gather. As globalization pulls them into a different rhythm, they resist, hoping to find ways for young people to understand not only the ceremony but the deep reverence it embodies. They hold gatherings and festivals, moments of community that mimic the old ceremonies, blending song and ritual, so the youth can feel the pulse of the past in their own hearts. And for brief moments, they see glimpses in young eyes, the awe, the understanding that the bear is more than a symbol, more than a story. It is a part of who they are. But the outside world pushes in relentlessly. As foreign ideas and influences reach further, there is a risk of the tradition becoming diluted, of becoming something seen as mere folklore, stripped of the reverence and ritual that once marked it. The ceremony, once sacred and deeply personal, may slowly turn into a spectacle, a festival celebrated only for the surface charm of costumes and stories. The bear, once feared, respected, and understood as kin, could become just another character in a world that no longer listens to the forest's voice. Elders fear this, and some speak of the need for a balance, to share the ceremony without losing its heart, to invite the world to witness without letting it take away the ceremony's soul. This balance is not easy. There are those who argue that the bear ceremony must adapt, that for the tradition to live on, it must find a way to coexist with the modern world. They see a future where technology and tradition meet, where a new generation can learn about the bear through digital storytelling, documentaries, and even immersive experiences that, while not real, might ignite a spark. For others, this is a painful compromise, a fear that something vital is lost when rituals are shared without the sense of awe and silence that once surrounded them. To some, the thought of turning the sacred bear into a digital symbol feels like losing a piece of their soul. Yet, the young ones, standing there by the trees, may carry hope of their own. They may grow up in a world where ancient and modern coexist in unexpected ways. They may carry phones, but they also carry stories. They are the ones who will decide how to hold on to the past. The question is whether the bear, this powerful guardian of the Finnish forest, will mean as much to them as it did to their ancestors. Some elders have begun teaching the old songs in schools, introducing younger generations to the myths, the tales of hunts and rituals, not to glamorize them, but to ground them. They teach with a quiet intensity, hoping that the songs will resonate, that the children will feel a connection they can't quite name. They know that the ceremony might need to adapt, but they believe that the essence of the bear, the protector, the spirit, the link between forest and human, must remain untouched. Perhaps there is hope in the simple moments, in the gatherings where young and old sit together, in the storytelling that turns strangers into family. The hope lies in those young children, listening, eyes wide, feeling a connection they don't fully understand. They are the future of the bear ceremony, a new generation that must find its own way to honor this ancient tradition. As they grow, they might come to know the forest, to feel the thrill of its mysteries, to hear the stories not as history but as part of themselves. They will inherit a tradition that holds centuries of life and death, of gratitude and awe. It's a fragile thread, a pulse that can only be felt if they, too, learn to listen deeply. The bear remains, waiting, a quiet presence in the Finnish forest. And though the world around it is ever-changing, the bear endures as a symbol of strength, of mystery, of life bound to the land. The children will grow, and one day they will be the elders standing by the trees, holding the hands of the next generation. And if they learn to listen, to feel the forest's quiet wisdom, then the bear ceremony will live on, not as a memory, but as a heartbeat, a connection that binds past, present, and future. The forest is hushed in twilight, and in that quiet moment, it is as if time itself pauses. This stillness, this deep-rooted silence, holds the spirit of countless ceremonies, each one wrapped in a profound sense of reverence for the bear. For generations, Finns have looked to the bear as a creature of unmatched power and mystery, a link between the human soul and the wild. In the dark shade of trees, under the endless sky, the memory of these ancient ceremonies lingers, a legacy woven so deeply into Finnish identity that it feels like part of the land itself. Each ceremony was a reminder that life and death, human and animal, forest and village are bound in a delicate balance. The bear embodied this connection, a spirit of the forest that would occasionally step into the lives of humans, demanding respect, guiding them to recognize that they too were part of something far greater than themselves. As Finns honored the bear, they were honoring their own dependence on the land and the spirit that moves through it, a reminder of how human life flows in rhythm with nature's heartbeat. Today, the bear remains a symbol, not only of Finland's past but also of its heart. The bear ceremony has left traces that stretch across time, revealing to each new generation a sense of unity with the wild. The bear is not just a creature of stories or an animal that roams unseen. It is a spirit that stands at the center of Finnish mythology, a reminder of the bond between humans and the natural world. And as Finns continue to tell these stories, to gather beneath the trees and remember, the bear lives on, guarding not just the forests, but the essence of Finnish cultural identity. There is something timeless in the respect held for the bear, in the songs sung and the rites performed by those who knew the forest as home. It is a respect that speaks to all who have ever felt the quiet pull of nature, who have ever stood in awe of a world that feels both familiar and untamed. In honoring the bear, the people were recognizing a truth that resonates still, that humans, despite all their complexity, belong to the earth just as much as the creatures that roam its vast, hidden places. And so, as the modern world presses forward, these stories and rituals remind Finns that they carry with them an unbreakable link to the past. The bear ceremony, though now more memory than practice, remains a source of strength, a legacy whispering that life is richer, more meaningful, when lived in harmony with the land. Through the bear, Finns honor their ancestors, who lived with a fierce respect for the life around them, and they remind themselves that the bear's spirit is also theirs to protect. The mythological connection between humans and the bear is more than a tradition, it is a testament to the deep-rooted human need to see the divine in the natural world. In the bear's silent strength, its solitary power, Finns have found a piece of themselves, something that grounds them, connects them to the land, and teaches them humility. The bear is the keeper of an ancient knowledge that, if we listen closely, still calls us to honor the life around us, to live with intention, and to walk softly on the earth.